Welcome, guys. Welcome. Welcome to the Brand Identity Design Business Podcast. And I'm your host, Jason Thomas. And we are currently doing this series called as The Dark Side of Entrepreneurship. And the aim of my show is to educate more and more entrepreneurs about business and recommend methods how to deal with adversities while you're running a business. And I do this and I accomplish this by interviewing high level business executives who are willing to not only share their personal but also professional experiences with my listeners. I assure you, this would not be just another boring business talk show which you generally hear or see online or view online. We will be injecting a lot of healthy dose of humor and personality to this mix. So you can expect to have a very good time while you're learning about entrepreneurship. So I would highly encourage you to sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and learn with us simultaneously. So I wanted to actually give a shout out to Rebecca Nunez. We are actually broadcasting on a lot of platforms. One, YouTube, LinkedIn as video. I'm also broadcasting on LinkedIn audio, and we have around 16 listeners hearing us live. Shout out to all the 16 listeners on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, on Twitter, I'm just testing it out, but I'm also broadcasting on Twitter Spaces simultaneously. So thank you so much, guys, for your love, and support, and also to make this show a very huge success. As you all know, my show, I started in Jan of 2022. It's been heard in almost 23 countries worldwide. I have produced 6,000 minutes of podcast content just in the business category. It's also one of the top 5% of the most shared podcast on social media. And I fall currently under the 30% of the most followed podcasts under business category. A lot of things I accomplished on a very short scale of time. And this wouldn't have been possible unless and until you listeners wouldn't have supported me. So thank you. Much love to you. And I don't want to take too much of your time because I have a very exciting guest, very interesting profile. Her name is Rebecca Nunez. Two people have been actually streaming us, are actually watching us on YouTube at this moment of time. Shout out to those individuals. So today's topic, I'm going to actually start off with a quote. When you live with grace and gratitude, happiness enters your life. A lovely quote. I don't know who said this, but I found this online. It's pretty spot on. So today's episode, 77th podcast episode, give yourself grace as entrepreneurs. And Rebecca is going to actually speak to us because we live in a degree of both success and failure as entrepreneurs while we are in public. And sometimes, or I can say that most of the times, things don't go according to plan. I'm positive many of you guys have lost clients, business opportunities, deals. Okay, you may have downsized your business as well. A lot of things would have actually went, which may have mentally and even physically affected you. So what Rebecca is actually going to do is she's going to help us understand how to let go of that regret anchor and to take one day at a time and how to make this happen. And I know it's a slightly complex topic, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a bit of questionnaires which kind of helps you and make you understand how to go about giving yourself grace. Let me also give a short introduction to who Rebecca is. First of all, Rebecca is an entrepreneur and she's also a cultural intelligence expert. I'm going to be specifying and asking her what that means shortly. Okay, and not just that, she's the founder and the owner of this agency called MRN Agency. The thing I like about her agency is that the MRN agency actually won the 2022 Association of National Advertisers Reggae Award. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Is it Reggae Award, right, Rebecca?
It's the Reggie Awards,
Oh, it's
Reggie.
Reggie Award. Okay, my apologies, guys. So Reggie Award, and not only that, recently the MRN agency has been ranked by Adweek as number four. Okay, not one, two, number four on the 75th fastest growing agencies in the 2022 list. Now, see, guys, that's a significant amount of achievement which Rebecca and his team was able to pull off. And not just that, the thing which I really love about her agency is it is minority owned and it has a 75% diversity and inclusion rate. Now, this is the most challenging thing of building up an organization, to have that kind of diversity in your business. So, hats off to you, Rebecca, on making this happen. I also want to give people a heads up on a little background about you. So, again, she's the founder and the founder of the brand strategy and experiential agency called MRN Agency. Please look this up if you guys are on LinkedIn. You should be able to find it by clicking on the description. Rebecca's profile is listed on the LinkedIn description. And she has two offices, one in the US and the other one in Mexico. And Rebecca is the first generation Mexican American. Her parents have been both immigrated from the USA in the early 70s, and she grew up as the youngest of three typical hardworking middle class Hispanic family. Rebecca's agency believes in eliminating random facts of marketing through data driven decision making process, and Rebecca has helped major tech brands to take B2C approach to their B2B marketing initiatives. And the MRN agency is also an agency of record for the major US wireless companies and their efforts to break into Mexico, also managing their sports and entertainment sponsorship portfolio, beating out some of these Hollywood elite agencies. Rebecca's agency has also helped design the first automated retail experiences in EU, and they are not just marketing agency but a diverse collection of experiences, insights, creativity that challenges the status quo and believe in always coming from a place of possibility. Some of Rebecca's clients are AT&T, State Farm, Nutanix, and among many others. I will highly recommend you to have a look at Rebecca's portfolio. You should be able to find her website details under the event description also. So thank you, Rebecca, for the opportunity. We had a slight change in schedule by 2 hours. We had to extend it due to some additional things which we had to take care of. But nevertheless, I'm so happy to see all these 19 listeners, hearing us live. So thank you, Rebecca. And I'm gonna play a sound effect, drum roll. Welcome, Rebecca, to the show.
Thank you, Jason. I'm so excited to be here. When you list out all the accomplishments like that, my goodness, it reminds me of just exactly how exciting this adventure has been. Starting the MRN agency in May of 2020, right in the middle, well, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and to where we are today. So I am incredibly honored and so excited to be here with you. And it's so also great, and I am a huge listener and fan, and also very impressed with how much content you've been able to curate in such little time. I'm a big believer that content not only is king, but it truly is where we're going, not only in the marketing landscape, but in general. So I commend you and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so happy to have you as well. So Rebecca, so let's actually deep dive into this conversation. Okay, now the first thing which I want my listeners to understand, I have never heard about this term called as a cultural intelligence expert. Okay, let's actually shed some light. Could you help my listeners understand what it means? Why do you call yourself as this?
Absolutely. So, cultural intelligence. It's really interesting. In my entire length of career, and I won't age myself, but it's almost been 2 decades that I've been in this industry. I've been really impressed with how, as a marketing industry, and most specifically, how so many brands have really understood the nuance to and the importance of multicultural marketing, and how important it is to really look at your target consumer and be able to understand the pivots and the very specific trigger points and passion points that turn a consumer into a customer. And so that's been a point throughout my entire career that I've been incredibly impressed by, and something I've always gravitated to. However, what we have seen, as a as an industry in general, is this massive shift in the last, I would say, 2 years. I think a lot of it had a lot to do with the pandemic and us really looking at social injustice differently, looking at the way brands were talking to us at a time when we weren't necessarily interested in making purchases as much as finding brands that were going to stand by us and really be able to support us during really difficult, dark time. And so I took a lot of those insights and was able to dissect and really help move that pivot. Where are we from multicultural marketing, really, which is a very generic term now, and move us into this more kind of diverse inclusivity. Brands more so than ever need to connect to their audiences and their very nuanced ways of their subculture. So I, for example, I am as you said, a first generation Latina. I am Mexican American, and a lot of my culture is very much part of my decision making process as a consumer, and as is my brand affinity and my brand loyalty. So when I think of I as a marketer, when I'm helping a brand achieve a go to market plan that's going to target, let's say, a target consumer like me, it's not just about looking at me as a first generation Mexican American Latina. What is my subculture? I am also the youngest of three. I am an entrepreneur. I am a female. So cultural intelligence dig double clicks on multicultural marketing and ask the questions, what are the subcultures under the culture? So for example, you can be a person of color, but also a veteran, or you could be disabled, or you could be bicultural and be kind of sit in both sides of your kind of inter race, right? And so, how does a brand dig deeper than just going, okay, let's put a certain typecast of what I assume this person is, and then how do I dig deeper into the nuances that are going to move the trigger? So, cultural intelligence also asks the question not just who, but why and how.
That is pretty cool. I'm so glad that you were able to find uh, such a gap. I would call it as a gap.
Sure.
Okay, and you were able to seize this opportunity. So understanding about the culture helps you, and culture and subculture helps you to have a better marketing approach, right? You are able to offer more, a different perspective to your clients, and because you have a diverse group of team members as well, the process becomes more inclusive and more better, and I think it's very result driven, if I'm correct to say, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And going to that point about my team, it was really important to me that we don't just talk the talk, but we walk the walk. So I can't say that we're cultural intelligence experts unless I have different cultures and subcultures in the room helping make and create those go to market plans and those strategies. So one of the reasons, and I agree with you, I think there is a big gap in that kind of agency landscape of we have the Hispanic agency or we have the multicultural agency, but what is the subculture agency? What is the cultural intelligence agency? And what we have found that a lot of brands have said to us is it's imperative that the people who are sitting in the room at the MRN agency have the same, speak the same language, are they same color, gender, identity, cultural nuance of the same target consumer that our brands are trying to target. So if you're trying to reach a specific subculture, I need to have that subculture in the room when making the go to market or marketing plans. And so it was very important to me that we do have this high diversity and inclusivity rate. In fact, I'm very, very pleased to say that we've actually just surpassed the 80% mark, and that is
What?
inclusive of
Okay, okay,
LAT.
hold on. Could you say that again? You marked.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
we're at 80% diverse and inclusivity rate. And I will also share with you, we were named by Adweek the number two fastest growing female and minority owned agency in
Shout out
2020.
to Rebecca and her entire team to make this happen, guys. If you guys are listening to us on LinkedIn, please give us a thumbs up. Acknowledging Rebecca's efforts. I know Rebecca can't see it, but I have my mobile phone. I should be able to see some of the people saying thumbs up. So Thank you so much for sharing that lovely news. Now, before we actually get into this conversation, I want to understand the person behind the screen, okay? Before we get into tactics. So, I want to ask you a personal question, from your bio. Now, you speak about the Polaroid photo of your parents on the step of the LA Convention Center, which inspired your career, and your journey by bootstrapping this agency. So I want to understand, how did that inspire you? What is the real story behind it? Unfortunately, guys, I don't. We were unable to actually arrange the actual picture due to a few technical limitations. Okay, but I want to really hear that part of that story, because that's one of the reason I approached you in the first place. That's what actually brought me to you, and I was like, I need to have her on the show, and we need to actually discuss more. So let's hear from you.
Thank you. Well, yes. So there is this amazing Polaroid photo that I have. It's my parents in the early 70s. They're standing in front of the LA Convention Center, and they are holding so very proudly their US citizenship certificate. It is, after they immigrated to this country, and with all the kind of hopes and dreams and sacrifices that they brought, that they could build a better life, not only for themselves and more importantly for their daughters and their family, which they absolutely did. And there's just this look. It's really funny. My dad is wearing these like pale blue bell bottoms, and my mom, I think she's got this scarf around her neck, right? Because that's what Americans look like at the time, at least. And just the look of pride and resilience, because I know the sacrifice that it took for them to come to this country so very young, do what they needed to do to kind of stand in line, become naturalized U.S. citizens. And now my dad was an entrepreneur for a very long time. My mom was in business, real estate specifically, and to see how they, with this dream and also all of this confidence that in America anything was possible. And so seeing them really build and a home, a family, and I say this all the time, I have zero privilege or pedigree. I grew up in the most typical middle class, blue collar, hardworking Hispanic family, and I couldn't be more thankful for that, because it's through them, it's through really that Polaroid that inspires me, that I always keep in my office as something to look back at, has been my inspiration to see and to know and acknowledge the sacrifice that my parents made to be able to come to this country and to give all the opportunities to us, their daughters. Me specifically, really always encouraging me to color outside the lines. I was never really afraid to do anything because I knew I had their support. And I think that their sacrifice to come to this country and to bootstrap their family into success, in the sense that we all got education, we all were able to really move into any careers that we could have dreamt of, is really exciting for me. And for a very, very long time, I was under the impression that the only way that I could do good by my parents' sacrifice, the only way I could really honor all of their hard work and their bootstrapping, and my dad waking up at 1 a.m. every morning to drive a truck to make sure that our family always had everything we needed, was if I got the big corner office, was if I had the big, title, and I sat in the fancy building and had a beautiful business card and, all the nice, fine things. And I, for a long time, did that. I moved and climbed my way up the corporate ladder. I achieved, right, what was the definition of success at that time. And I thought, I'm finally making my parents proud. I'm doing the thing. But I always had this like itch I couldn't scratch of entrepreneurship. This something that said to me there was more, and I could do this on my own. And watching my parents do it, I thought I could do it. This fear of failing publicly is what always stopped me. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I can say now today, after taking the leap of starting my own agency, I'm actively sitting in our Mexico City office, which is a huge dream come true. I know that now seeing my name on the business card is what really is honoring my parents. It's what's really honoring their sacrifice. It's honoring, that smile and that pride when they were holding that certificate in front of the LA Convention Center, because I get to really be an extension of that legacy.
That is such an inspirational story, and a story of not only just the past, but also in terms of how things went ahead for you and how you shaped a future for yourself. Very inspiring, Rebecca. Very, very inspiring, because I, most people have this perception that if you want to be in business, you have to be rich, or your parents have to be rich to make it happen, and that's not entirely true. Maybe to some extent the money does help you to get a little jump start, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have it, and if you're coming from a limited background, like you and me, for an example. I come from a third world country altogether, but I'm speaking with you, trying to understand, have this knowledge, which we're sharing with one another. So I think with solid determination, if you have the passion, if you have the will, the mental capacity, and if you can dream, anything and everything is possible, right? But you should be able to handle the grind, because it's not easy to handle the grind. Many people let go and push back because the grind is hard. I love what you shared. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to actually get a little more further, because the thing I really liked about your agency is about the 92% fail rate. As a female founder, you were able to beat within the first year of having this agency without any funding. And not only that, you were able to establish two offices, one in North America and Mexico, along with the staff, okay, paid staff, hired full-time staff. So, I want to actually hear, how did you make this all happen in with this short stipulated period of time? So let's hear that story.
Sure. Well, like I said, I spent, a decade and a half really building my career, climbing that ladder. I, worked at the big three top agencies, as high up as I could potentially get. There is something I always knew. I, and while I appreciate and learn so much and all that foundational knowledge that I put into practice every single day, um, I knew I was always invited to the room at those big companies, but at the end of the day, I'm still a woman. I'm still a woman of color. And there are challenges that exist because of that, unfortunately. And I think as an industry, there have been massive strides made to help close that gap, but the truth is the gap exists. And so I always knew I was invited to the room, but I didn't always really have a seat. And I definitely had a voice, but it was only allowed to be used when the microphone was handed to me. And so I, for the longest time thought this was just going to be the way it was going to be, right? I was going to just continue climbing that ladder, getting the great titles, and feeling as if I had, reached success. Then 2020 hits, March specifically, and the entire world changed. And my very important job, that was my identity, my very important office and assistants, all of a sudden didn't matter. And I became a redundancy, and my job was impacted. And that, since the first time I started working very early on in radio, in my very early 20s to now, I'd never been unemployed. And it was a massive, well, one, hit to my ego, which is something I've learned to check at the door. And two, what was I going to do next? My entire identity was wrapped around my big career. And I took some time, to your point, during the pandemic. It made it easy. I like to say that when you have more time to sleep in, your dreams get louder. And so, because we had that space, during the first couple months of the pandemic, I that little voice in me, that same voice that tells you not to have that extra slice of pie, that voice was like, you can just do it yourself. I've always believed that your net worth is directly connected to your network. And so I decided to double down on that, and I called up all my clients and anyone that I had, relationships with, that I had built over this big career. And, a month later, with, a few $1,000s in my bank account and all the support of my family and my clients, I started in my living room, and in a month and a half, it went from one client to 10 clients, and then in 4 months, it turned into, we got too big from working out of the living room. So then it's going to the garage. And then that got too big. And then we opened up our first office in Los Angeles and started to hire staff. And it went from 1 to 10 very quickly. And then this amazing opportunity with AT&T Mexico happened, which was also relationship based. And then all of a sudden I was expanding into Mexico. And then a year later, I have a full time staff here, and now we're sitting in our Mexico City office. It's just been truly a whirlwind, and I am so very blessed. But to your point earlier, it's a lot of work. This has not been an easy 2 year. We just hit our 2.5 year mark. We're about to hit 3 years in May, and this has been really hard. There's been a lot more failures and successes. Of course, if you look at our LinkedIn, we only post the successes, but I have found that it is, I've learned the most from the pitches we've lost and the pitches we've won in this time. I've learned the most from, those challenges and those pivots. And as hard as it's been, and I always tell people, I wish someone had told me how hard it was going to be. And then a really dear friend of mine said, if we had told you, you would never have done it. And so I'm glad I didn't really know. And I was able to jump in and, to your point, not just bootstrap, but really kind of run with the punches. And thankfully, because I've got such an amazing team and backbone and foundation, we've been able to beat that 92% fail rate. And I really want to take a second for people to hear that stat, because that was really important and impactful to me when I heard it when I started the agency. 92% of female founders of color fail their first year of entrepreneurship. That is a massive, massive failure rate. And I'm so very proud to see that, particularly through the pandemic, entrepreneurship has been at an all time high, particularly within people of color and females of color, which is something I advocate for. And I'm such a big supporter of, and I'm inspired by. In fact, some of the people that I admire the most have, really broken those barriers so that I could have the privilege to walk through. And I feel so very fortunate and hopeful that by being part of that small percentage that did make it, that I am then helping pave the way for the next female founder of color behind me. And I'm hoping that the same way those women before me have made it easier for me, that I can make it easier for the female behind me.
Absolutely, absolutely. 92% is quite a very big number of females who are not able to achieve it, and we need to help one another out. And the purpose of interviewing Rebecca is to make you guys understand that sometimes, most of the times, you only look at the tip of the iceberg, but there is a lot of work which goes behind to make the tip of the iceberg as fascinating and fabulous as it seems. So if you are an entrepreneur, and if you have challenges, and if you are struggling out there, I will highly encourage you, get as much help as you can. Do not be shy to ask for help, and collectively, it's a collective process. That's how you rise to the top. Don't try to jump over one another to grow. Try to pull one another up, and that's the best way to go, because it just brings a lot of blessing. It gives you peace of mind, you're calm, and all those nice stuff. So Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to acknowledge some of the people who actually posting things on chat on YouTube. I wanted to give a shout out to Leslie Dowling. She said greetings. She's a regular listener to my show. I see somebody new. Her name is Naomi Bang. Amazing. Love it. So thank you, Naomi, guys. If you guys have questions or anything, if you're listening to us on YouTube, feel free to put questions on the chat, and I should be able to ask Rebecca those questions, as we progress towards Q&A. So let's actually deep dive into the actual topic of today's conversation. So when you say give yourself grace, okay, what does that mean to you, Rebecca? Okay, let's actually hear from you. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. What does that mean to you? Because you are the one who chose this topic. I'm really excited. Tell me how you do it.
Sure. I think it's important that if you're thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship, if you are an entrepreneur, it's so important to give yourself grace, space, and patience, because the truth is this journey is really hard, and the truth is that you're going to find yourself with challenges and making mistakes, and half the time you are treading water hoping to stay above, and that's how it's supposed to feel. And I think that's what I really wanted to talk about outside of my journey and the agency. I wanted to inspire and really encourage other people. If you're feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing, or I want to venture into entrepreneurship, I want to start my own business, or I want that promotion, or I want to try this new industry, that feeling that you have right now in your stomach, in your gut, that is filled of butterflies and question marks, that is the way it's supposed to feel, and that is okay. I'll tell you, when I started the agency in May, as I already mentioned, within the first few months of starting the agency, my sister unfortunately passed away due to COVID. And I say that because, as you can imagine, that was an incredibly difficult time for our family. In fact, yesterday would have been her birthday, and I can't think of a better way to honor her than to be here today. So thank you, Jason, for that. But I say, when that happened, immediately I thought to myself, there's no way I can continue running this business. How can I run this business with all these people dependent on me, with clients dependent on me? And I personally am falling apart, right? Because life still is happening. And our family, part in this specific example, was grieving. I was grieving. Everything seemed almost too impossible to conquer. And yet I had that decision of, do I continue with the agency? Because before, when I was at these other companies, I could get bereavement leave or time off or family leave, and that was fine. Now I'm the one that needs to make sure that I have it together and I can handle everything, and also make sure that my team and my clients are very much taken care of. And when I say I learned the 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 core lesson that I think will be something that will be part of the DNA of the MRN agency, and that I encourage everyone here listening, is I had to learn to give myself grace. It was okay if after a conference call I needed to go to the restroom and break down in tears. It was okay if I needed to take some time off, or if I needed to sleep in, or if I needed to have one too many glasses of wine, right? It's okay if I needed to be human while also being an entrepreneur. And I say that because in my case, this is one of the most extreme examples of needing to give myself grace. But I say that, I say it's okay if in your journey you need to balance your family, or if you're a working mom, to say no to that meeting because you need to go be with your kids or your family. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay for you to not have all the answers. It's absolutely fine if you you aren't the kind of always perfectly prepared and ready to go. And I say that because there's some, at least for me, I'm a very kind of chaotic, everything everywhere type of person. It's the way my brain works. And I've had to be okay with the fact that I'm never going to be that super organized person that, my desktop, everyone makes fun of me. It's a total mess. I can't tell you how or where files are saved, but I'm really good at this other stuff, and I'm really creative, and I'm great at client servicing, and I believe I'm really great at building strategy and executing it. So it's okay if I can't do all this other stuff. It's okay if that isn't my skill set. It doesn't mean that I still can't be an entrepreneur and a business owner. And also, I'm a woman, I'm a daughter, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a puppy mom, right? Like all these other things that are important to me and are part of my value set. Finding the intersection between my personal and my professional values was really important to me. And that means giving yourself grace if you mess up or you don't have the answers, and asking for help. I think you said it best when you said we should ask each other. I'm a big believer in lifting while you climb. And so I went from being someone who I thought was one of the smartest people in the room to now realizing I need to surround myself with smarter people in the room. And I'm very thankful that I have a team that is 20 times smarter, more talented, so much more creative and strategic than I'll ever be. And that's okay. That's part of the journey. And so I really do believe that giving yourself those moments to be human, which means making mistakes, which means not having all the answers, which means not being the smartest person in the room. It's all of those pieces that actually support the other parts of you that are incredibly things that you can be talented and be proud of. And so I think I've had to really give myself that grace, space, and patience. And I really think that was a topic I wanted to talk about today because I don't think we talk about that enough. I think we all think everyone has it together. And you see the awards and the accolades, and you go, oh my gosh, Rebecca must have it all together. Rebecca does not have it all together. In fact, sometimes I feel like I have control of absolutely nothing. And I think there's beauty in chaos sometimes, and it's okay sometimes to be camera off and not be on all the time, if you will.
Rebecca is
It's
not good.
uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to go, it's okay. You don't have to have it all together all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really like your perspective. Give grace, give yourself some space. And the last thing you said is give yourself some patience. And it's okay if you don't have all the answers. You don't have to be uptight. And when you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean that you are the person who knows everything. It's okay. Relax, take one day at a time. If you don't know something, feel free to ask, research about it. Even if you want to start something which you're not very sure of, it's okay, if it's not really perfect. So I really love what you shared, Rebecca. I know you're such a humble person, and I can make out, while you're explaining all these things to me and to my listeners. So I wanted to let the audience know from LinkedIn, Twitter, that we will be starting Q&A shortly. If you're interested in asking Rebecca questions, my show actually permits to have that one-on-one engagement. Feel free to raise your hand, and I would be happy to invite you up. I just have a few other questions for Rebecca before we move to Q&A. So my next question is about perfectionism, and the reason I wanted to actually include this because a lot of times entrepreneurs are really hard because you see examples, you see watch videos, you see how other people do things, and you want to talk like them, you want to be like them. So this perfectionism, keeps going on in an entrepreneur's mind. So what advice would you give to thus, so to those individuals? I'm so sorry, maybe I didn't phrase the question correctly. What advice would you like to give those individuals who want to break free from perfectionism and to go after something which they really want?
That's a wonderful question, and I've got a great example for this. As you know, we're in Mexico City, and we service our one of our clients, AT&T Mexico, here across all the region, all the country of Mexico. We develop go-to-market plans, really strategic go-to-market plans around their sponsorship and drive to retail initiatives. When I'm a first generation Mexican American. I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised, a little town called Downey. I grew up speaking Spanish. In fact, it was my first language. I grew up really like going to church in Spanish. My entire life was in Spanish. And even then, because I'm bicultural, I do not speak perfect Spanish. I think I speak, I don't know, I would rate myself a 6 out of 10. And what I really, really didn't necessarily have practice in was business level Spanish. So when I started to work with AT&T Mexico, and I'm the strategic lead and the client lead, there was a gap there for me where I thought, will they take me seriously because I don't speak Spanish perfectly? Will I be able to present this big strategic idea when I don't necessarily know the right, you know, context to say this in the language perfectly? And I decided I was not going to let that, what felt like a insecurity of mine, be an insecurity. And so I stood in front of the room and I've presented various times to, C-level executives and others. And I had to let go that feeling of I need to sound perfect. I need to sound like all the other agencies that they went to school in Mexico and know all the marketing terms perfectly in Spanish. And I don't. And I have found that it's part of my charm. And sometimes in the middle of a meeting, I won't be able to say the right words, so I'll throw some Spanglish in there, or I'll just say the word in English, and I'll get a couple chuckles from the client, but it's part of my charm, I think. It's part of my identity. And frankly, it's just who I am. And so I think that being an authentic version of me, which me is not perfect. Me makes mistakes. Me doesn't know all the Spanish words perfectly. Me will sometimes even mispronounce the English words. And I think that authenticity versus perfection has been part of what has made me successful in my career as an entrepreneur, with my clients, with my team. I have never been an entrepreneur before. So I'm a novice. I'm a rookie entrepreneur, which means I'm a rookie leader to my team in this way. And so I have to give myself that grace too. I'm not a perfect entrepreneur. I'm not a perfect boss. I'm not a perfect, executive all the time. And that's okay, because I am still me and I am still my authentic self. And whether I'm out with clients or I'm with my team or if we're at happy hour, I mean, who I am, I hope, is who you are meeting, whether it's me pitching you a new campaign or whether it's me giving you feedback because, we're working on a specific project together. And I think that by not creating an identity for myself that was perfectly poised because I see this other executive or this other entrepreneur, this other boss does it that way, I've really given myself the freedom to create my own professional identity as the owner and CEO of the MRN agency. And, that example of not being able to speak Spanish perfectly, I think is something I remind myself all the time before I walk into any pitch, before I sit with my team. It's okay if I'm not perfect, as long as I'm myself and that's what's being transmitted. At least it's worked for me.
You shared something so awesome while explaining this, is because you said that most people would find not being able to speak Spanish. Okay, to take the same example which you shared, if I didn't know Spanish, most people would be like, I have to be perfect, I have to get it right, then only I'm going to approach AT&T because it's a big client, right? They're among the Fortune 100 and 500 companies, such big client. How, it would be very unprofessional if I don't know the same dialects, if I don't speak or have the same verbatim. I like what you said is that stop comparing yourself and create your own identity, because as individuals you have your own identity. If you talk and if you chit chat, if you speak like everyone else, what's the difference between you and somebody else? So lovely point, Rebecca. Anything else you want to share before I move on? Please go ahead. I'm so sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt you, while you were sharing it.
No, interruptions. No, this has been great. I think above all things, the way I really want to wrap kind of this section up is kind of going back to that topic of giving yourself grace, space, and patience. I say this even if you're not interested in becoming an entrepreneur. That lesson should be something that if you are just, not just, but if you are in your a career and you find yourself incredibly stressed and you don't know how to find the balance, or you want to go for that promotion, or you want to interview for that new job, or you want to switch industries, or you want to switch just or you want to stop working, whatever it may be, or if you're not working, you want to join the workforce, whatever that space might be, or if you're a college student and you haven't figured out exactly where and what you want to do, all of it is okay. It is okay to feel nervous. It is okay to not know all the answers. It is fine to try and test. It's great. I'm telling you, I have learned the most from the pitches I've lost and the pitches I've won. So it's okay to try things and it not and fail or decide it's not for you. If you don't have it all perfectly laid out, that's all right. It's supposed to feel that way. And if you're nervous to leave that job, or you're nervous to take that interview, or if you're nervous to start your own business, whatever that nervous feeling you have, just listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. You know, that little voice in you is rarely wrong. So if something tells you, go and try it, and you have the opportunity to do so, I think I would encourage you to do it. And it doesn't have to be a huge move. It doesn't mean resign and quit tomorrow and try something completely different. If you're interested in the industry, take a class to see if you like it first. Research online, get a mentor in that space, speak to someone else who may be in that department to understand it. Interview for the job, even if you think you're not qualified for it yet, because the questions that they'll ask you, even if you don't get the job, you'll know the goals that you want to set for yourself so that you are ready for that job one day. So it's not just about entrepreneurship. I think in a business setting in general, wherever your career is headed and wherever your next stop is, make sure that you're giving yourself that grace, that space, and that patience.
I really love what you have shared, Rebecca. You keep throwing bombs, back to back. Like, every time I ask you something, you keep throwing bombs. And trust me, I'm not gaslighting, guys. Just to make her feel good. She is an awesome individual. I truly commend her on her knowledge and her leadership skills, and how she carries herself, and how she does business. So it's very, very inspiring, and you can learn quite a lot, just by hearing the individual, seeing some of the stuff which you and your team was able to accomplish. It's very inspiring. So kudos to you on that. Once again, guys, on LinkedIn, if you want to ask questions, I'm not going to force you. People feel that I force people to come and ask questions, but it is a lovely opportunity to be a part of the podcast too. Okay, your voice will be heard not only by my listeners but your family. You can share it, you can tell them, see, I was a part of that small snippet and I was able to ask that question. So if anybody is interested in asking questions, feel free to raise your hand. I would be happy to bring you up and to this virtual stage, and you can ask Rebecca questions about entrepreneurship or anything about this topic. That would be amazing. So, one last thing. So, I have Thomas Condell from Australia, who's a frequent listener to my show and contributor. And when I actually broadcast my show, usually, Rebecca, it's usually at 12 Eastern Standard Time, and in Australia, it's around 4 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time is 4 a.m. So he sleeps, but every week on Wednesday, he spares time so that he can participate on my show and contribute and meet some of those guests and build connection. And I can assure you, Thomas, and I can see Thomas, you're on stage. You have built a lot of connection just participating on my show. Isn't that lovely? So, welcome, Thomas,
That's
to the stage. So, yeah, absolutely. Now, so Thomas, I can hear a little background noise. So just check your microphone levels because I can hear some backfeed. Let me ask Rebecca another question before we move on to Thomas with Q&A. So I want to understand about you and your personal opinion. Although you have mentioned about diversity and inclusion a lot during this interview and how it has helped you, I want to understand is that how, as a team, are you able to utilize diversity and inclusion to execute some of these projects? How does that actually apply in real life? How does these ideas shape with diversity and inclusion? What is the difference between traditional method of decision making for a project and what happens when you have a diverse culture or a work culture, to so just for our audience so that they understand. I hope you get my question.
I do, I do, I definitely do. You mentioned it earlier when you were introducing the agency. I always like to start presentations when I'm pitching to a client and say, listen, let me just rip off the band-aid and say the thing I'm not supposed to say at the beginning of a pitch, which is we are not a creative-led agency. And everyone like goes, oh my gosh, why are you saying that? We're not a creative-led agency. We are a data-led agency. The MRN agency believes that we can eliminate random acts of marketing through data driven decision making. When you have insights and data and analytics to help shape a go to market marketing plan, whether you're a new or 100-year-old brand like State Farm, when you're using kind of data and insights to help carve out what that looks like, you're able to also quantify it. So that means it's not just about what the plan is going to be, but what are the KPIs or the key performance indicators, the goals, the ROI that will then able to tie back to the campaign or the program to be able to identify if it works. So I say that because as a cultural intelligence agency where we specifically have a lot of data and insights around the importance of diversity and inclusion, it's important to also know that context matters, right? And so context sometimes needs a little color. And so while the data helps build our strategy, it's no pun intended, it's really the color of that context that then helps drive what we're going to do and helps drive, like you said, the actual real life application of that strategy. And that's where having a team, for example, I have a team here in Mexico. They are all, born and raised in Mexico. And so even though strategy can be and is developed in our LA office, the actual execution of our strategy and our programs are executed by the team here because they understand the nuances of the country, of the community, of the consumers we're trying to reach. And so it's so important that the people who are working on the program actually have passion points that we can utilize to help guide and also help pivot and also help us avoid pitfalls. Um, I say this all the time, and I won't name any brands, but I think in the last year or two, we've seen a lot of brands that unfortunately have come across as very tone deaf in their marketing and their commercials and their artwork because the people making the decisions don't look or speak or identify with the people that they're trying to sell the product to. And so it's very easy for cultural nuances to get missed in the boardroom when the boardroom isn't made up of the people that you're trying to sell a product to. And so I think it's incredibly important in the MRN agency. It's our DNA. It's the first thing we say to people. The truth is that we are more diverse than ever, particularly in the US, more diverse than ever. And we're just getting more diverse, which means when you're thinking general audience, you're really thinking a diverse audience. So if the people in the room who are building the strategy and the creative and the artwork and are not those people, that's when mistakes are made. So it is so, so important that the decision makers in the room, the creatives, the people who are coming up with strategy can personally identify with the initiatives that we're putting forward. And that's why we say we're not a multicultural agency, we're not a Hispanic agency, we're not just a female minority owned agency, we're cultural experts because we understand the subtext to context.
I appreciate you explaining, in a way which you did, because you're absolutely right. We are actually catering to a diverse culture. So then those passion points, those points, those touch points, which is gonna make a person get into that product or service, it has to reflect on the same ideology. So having people from that diverse group helps you to have a better market penetration. And I think many corporations, big or small, whoever, whichever range you can look at, not many of them are following it. I would highly encourage business owners to get into diversified board and also staff, and handle projects in a way which, and another thing is, Rebecca, when you actually get the right people. Okay, for an example, if you got the right team, you said that with AT&T project, you were able to handle things from Mexico. You wanted the Mexican team to handle it. That shows that you really respect the client and their vision, and you want to make it happen in a way which benefits them, and not, it's not just focused on you. It's focused on how we can execute it for them. So, am I right in saying it? That's what I felt from what you shared.
No, you're absolutely right, right? It's about authenticity, right? It goes back to
Yeah.
what I said earlier about when, the way I present, I hope is authentic. Campaigns only work when they're authentic. One of my clients and dear friends, she always says, it's not about story selling, it's about storytelling. So a good marketer knows that in order to build a campaign that's going to resonate with a target audience, it has to feel authentic. It has to feel real to the core. And so data can tell us, for example, US Hispanics love soccer. Data tells us that. But then subcontext tells us the way fandom is celebrated is that I get with my buddy every Sunday and I watch the game, or I watch with my family, or it's important to me because it's multi-generational and I grew up watching soccer with my dad, and so to me it's more an emotional connection. That's subtext, right? So data tells us, okay, US Hispanics soccer, all right, but there's more. And so then when you're really building out your strategy, it's like, what are all those layers under that fandom, right? Under that data point that we can authentic. And that's what we do here at MRN US and in Mexico. It's more about taking that data, adding color to the data, finding the subtext, and double clicking, and then present it in a way that is going to feel really authentic, not just to the brand, but to the consumer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm with you. I just wanted to, post a comment because Frank Money Talk, which you see as a comment, just okay. So he's going to be a guest on my show next week, December 21st, and he also agrees with you. Campaigns only work when they are authentic. 100%. He agrees with you, Rebecca. So I appreciate that share. Since we don't have too many people, we're going to just go ahead with the show. Okay, before I allow Thomas to actually ask you a question, I just wanted to ask this one thing. Okay, I always ask this question to all my guests. Okay, now we all want to be remembered for many things. Okay, what is that one thing you want to be remembered for? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Leave, actually, not live.
That feeling every time I see that photo of my parents, that feeling of with a little grit, a lot of resilience, some luck, and a lot of hard work, that I can do it. And that's the feeling I got from that photo. And I would love if one day my story did that to some young woman who wants to do it too, and who hears my story and says, okay, I can try, and let me try building my own company. And I'm going to start with, one little project and keep building my way up. So if that feeling I get when I see that photo of my parents, I could bottle, it's yeah, it's possible. And as they stood there with their certificate, and they're just this look in their eye of anything is possible. And I know that I've learned that from them. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of grit, a ton of resilience, and a lot of grace, but it's possible. So if I can do that, and my legacy could be that someone heard this podcast or some other, article or anything else I've been in, if, I'm not crediting me, but this feeling, if I can give that feeling to someone else that I got from them, I think that'd be a great way to be able to say that I contributed to the advancement of where I hope we continue to go.
I agree with you 100%. Yes, it's going to be a great feeling. It feels fulfilled. It feels like you were able to do something and leave something for someone who it was able to inspire that individual to do something great which his or her life. So yeah, it's an awesome feeling. So I mean, I totally agree and resonate with you 100% on this. So let's actually start with Q&A. So thank you so much for your patience, Thomas. I hope the audio is okay. So please unmute yourself. Testing. I know. We started a little late.
I can't hear him, so if you don't mind just repeating his question to me.
Oh, you're not able to hear him, Rebecca? No audio at all, right? I can hear him. I'll phrase the question to you. Okay, don't worry.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. Thank you so much for that, Thomas. So Thomas said a few things, Rebecca, and guys, if you're on YouTube, if you were able to hear what Thomas said, please give me a thumbs up on chat. Okay, so what Thomas is saying, first of all, he's acknowledging, and he's very sorry to hear about your sister's loss, and you know what, actually, my condolences as well. Actually, while you were speaking, and because you spoke a lot of things, it completely slipped my mind. So my condolences to your loss, and wherever she is, I know she's in a very beautiful place. She's happy, and belated birthday to your sister. And
Thank you.
and so Thomas says, sorry about your sister's loss, and he said that crossing the cultural chasm for your parents from moving to America. Okay, how was it? Was it challenging, or how did that thing shape up? Thomas, just want to make sure that I phrased the question correctly. Is that what you asked? Yes, yes.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Thomas, thank you
Mhm.
for listening
What
to this
thing? I'm
episode.
so sorry. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I didn't mean to cut you back there. What was the hardest thing, for your parents to cross the chasm? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, Thomas, even though I couldn't hear you, I do want to thank you not only for listening and watching this episode, but for supporting this channel and this amazing platform that Jason's been able to build, which is incredibly impressive. And I'm sorry we changed the time on you, but thank you for being flexible. I had to give myself a little grace that I had a client um, deliverable that I needed to work out this morning. But so in terms of my parents, I'm so very fortunate that my family, we're a small unit. I'm the youngest of three. I'm 12 and 13 years younger than my oldest sister and my middle sister who passed. And so I always like to say I'm the best mistake my parents ever made all these years later. But I was very fortunate that I think that their experience in coming from Mexico to the US, so they came when they were very young. They actually met here in the US, which is really interesting. And my dad worked in a factory, and my mom, it's actually the cutest story. My dad was kind of out on like the floor, the logistics floor, and my mom worked in the office, and my dad like put on a, like a little paper tie to impress her, and, lied about his age, and, wooed her. And then just a few months later, they were married. And so their story, I think, is really impressive, not just from a, love story, if you will, but more so I think that they both had a very clear vision as to why they came to this country, and then they found each other and found the very similarities in each other, that they were going to grind and work, and they knew that only in America, honestly, can two immigrants be able to build an entire family and home. Um, and relative levels of success, become homeowners and so forth. And I think that very early on they saw that in each other, and they also acknowledged how hard it was going to be, but that it would be easier together. And I think that their tenacity and their resilience, I hear all these stories of how they had my sisters when they were very, very young. I mean, they were teenagers, really, which is, hard to think of now. But my parents were really teenagers with two young girls. And, there's an amazing story my mom and dad always tell about how, my dad was out looking for a job, and my oldest sister Maritza was in the back seat, and, he was just driving to different places asking for a job and putting in applications. And I like to say I got my gift of gab, my talent of being able to speak, from my dad. And then my mom was incredibly resilient and incredibly strategic. And so, hearing their stories of how they really built their foundation brick by brick. They, again, zero pedigree, no privilege. And, they were just two really, really hardworking immigrants who believed it was possible. And my dad knocked on every company door with my sister in the back seat, as a 1 year old. They tell the story about how, they didn't even have a lot of photos of her because, they couldn't afford a camera or have a baby shower. And, they knew that they wanted to build a life that would give my sisters and me the opportunity to dream as big as we wanted to dream. And so, because my dad knocked on all those company doors, eventually ventured out and started his own company, and being an entrepreneur. My mom, even though, she sometimes, at the beginning at least, struggled with the language, went to every class available so that she could, learn to speak English perfectly, and then took the real estate exam until she passed it, and then started to be in real estate and build her career. And, watching both of my parents, work so hard, knowing that it was going to be a little harder for them because they were immigrants and because they had some cultural challenges, I think is what shaped my sisters in the way that they see their career, and how, my older sister, when she started her family, the same values that she's giving my niece and nephew. My sister, before passing, she was a teacher, and she loved this idea of inspiring children. And it was always so important to her to make sure that her culture was first. And so she was a Spanish major and an English teacher. And she loved the idea of being able to spread kind of that importance of being a little bit of both and playing both worlds, bicultural. And so all that stems from my parents. All that stems from them deciding as kids to come to this country, with a work visa that was temporary, and hope that they could find a way to build their life here in the country. And so they did. And thankfully so. And then I think that's why that photo of them holding the certificate is so near and dear to me, because I know that did not come easy for them. And I know they struggled. And I know that before the home I was, fortunate and blessed enough to grow up in, they were, they started one brick at a time. And I never have seen, my dad, up until recently when he just retired, would wake up every morning at 1 a.m. To drive a truck, hours to go drop off loads and come back. And he just never lost that feeling of you never stop working. And it can all go away tomorrow. And I think I live with that too, right? Taking nothing for granted and knowing that we are all very blessed to have the opportunities and the fortune, the fortunate privilege I have to be a CEO. All of it could go away, and so it's working really hard. And I think watching their journey, they actually just celebrated their 50th year wedding anniversary a few days ago, and so there's something again just full circle of knowing that they met as kids, and 50 years later, they're still together, and they're my biggest fans. And without that photo of them, I don't know if I would have taken the leap that I did.
Absolutely. Congratulations on your parents' 50th anniversary. I wish I could have played the sound effect, but since I'm recording, the application doesn't allow you to switch and toggle back. But congratulations, Rebecca, on that. Now, Thomas, because we have this technical limitation, especially when we do video, so that's why she's not able to hear you. So I don't know if you can respond and if I can paraphrase everything, but just to keep the structure of the show simple, if you have a follow-up question, anything you'd like to contribute, just let me know. I would be happy to phrase it in a simplified way to Rebecca. Go ahead. Thank you so much for that, Thomas. So Thomas said, wonderful story, very inspiring, and kudos to your father for having such an awesome work ethic. And he said, thank you so much, Rebecca, for your contribution. So that's actually with Q&A. So what we can do is right now we'll start with rapid fire questions. Okay, so rapid fire questions is actually to understand the human and the funny side of Rebecca. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, Rebecca. Okay, you don't have much time. Okay, be as quick as possible. Okay, and one question for which will be common for everybody who is on stage. So if your listeners, if you want to just participate on the fun side of it with rapid fire questions, you're welcome to raise your hand and join the conversation too. Okay, so let me go ahead and ask rapid fire questions. Okay, so Rebecca, what makes you laugh the most?
Ooh, these are hard. Probably my dog Pina. She is she is a 4-year-old golden doodle, and she is absolutely ridiculous. We call her Doggo in Chief. She comes to the office every day, and she sits right next to me. And at the most inopportune times, she'll make a cameo on like a very important business meeting or pitch. And so it is a great icebreaker. But she's quite a hoot. So I would say she makes me laugh constantly.
Lovely. I have, and what was her name again? You said Pinya, right?
Pina, like a pina colada.
Oh, lovely name. Very creative. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next question for you. What's the most hilarious fact you know?
About me or that I know? Say about me, I would say,
When actually, you know what? When I actually phrased that question, I didn't realize that can be a problem. So, uh, and maybe you can try both. One fact about you and one fact, outside. Something not about you, but something about the world. Maybe.
let's see, a hilarious fact about me. Like I have a guilty pleasure is I think I spend way too much time on TikTok. I think that's way too much time. I find myself, it's my first social I look at and I go to sleep too. So that's funny. And I don't know, a hilarious fact in general. I don't know. I think that I've with all the travel that that I've been fortunate enough to do. It's the entire kind of the system. I'll tell you something. I'm a Delta only flyer, and so I take Delta very seriously, and I get all my points. So I think that it's very funny to find little loopholes as a way to like double and get extra points and things. So I'm always looking for ways. So I don't know if I have a necessarily hilarious fact about it as much as a tip to look into all the loopholes and ways for you to get extra points and make all your travel worth it.
That's some solid advice, guys. If you're a frequent flyer, Delta is the way to go. They have a lot of loopholes. We are just joking, okay, Delta? Please don't sue us. So, okay, next question. Okay, what is your wildest fantasy you ever had? Doesn't have to be sexual, general. I want to be very clear. Good.
Let's see. I don't know. I have this. Well, speaking of flying, I am a very, very bad flyer. And so I have this dream of one day, being able to fly off to any, great vacation destination. But even in this is actually really funny, even in my wildest dreams, like if somebody said to me, you won the lottery and you could take the most amazing vacation that you want, I still would never fly private. I would never get on a private jet or a small plane. I'm desperately, desperately afraid of flying. In fact, on my way to Mexico City from Chicago, where I was coming from, I had an entire panic attack on the plane. So even in my wildest dreams, I'm still very limited. So my wildest dreams is to be able to, travel around the world and be able to see, again, I'm a lover of cultures. And so being able to learn about different cultures really all over the world and a lot of kind of like discover unknown places. But even in my wildest dreams, I would still always fly commercial.
Okay, okay. Now that's most people would lean on to private jets, but you, on the other hand, you'll
Never,
stick to Delta.
never. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What's the most creative insult you can think of?
Hmm.
Mm.
Creative insult. I just watched a movie. I can't remember the name of it, and I thought it was one of the best insults I've ever heard.
Mhm.
There was it was Mila Kunis. I can't remember the name of the movie. It just came out on Netflix, and she had some woman reporter that was critiquing her, and she gave her criticism, and it was wildly incorrect, and it was just very critical. And instead of letting it break her, she goes back to that woman and says, "Excuse me, what is your name again?" And as that reporter is about to say her name, this movie is set in New York. She stops her and goes, "Actually, I'll just remember you as a woman I told to F off on Fifth Avenue," and turns around. And I'm like, oh, I loved it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
I appreciate that very, very much. Okay, now I have a common question for everyone, for you as well as Thomas, and for you, Rebecca. Okay, so we'll start from you. What would you do if you only had 24 hours to live?
That's a great question. Um, Spend it with my family. I think that would be it. My family, my boyfriend, my dog, my best friends. I think that, the people that I am so very, very blessed to call my tribe, right? The people who have um, probably been the most inspirational people to me. And so I think those 24 hours would probably be 24 hours filled with gratitude. And it's to those people who have been instrumental in probably getting me to that place. So yeah, I think that would be it.
I totally agree. In my case, Rebecca, we're gonna have like repetitive meals. Like a lot of food would be involved in my
Okay. No, that's a good point. Maybe there'll be some ice cream and gratitude. Okay.
all right. Let's actually hear from Thomas. So Thomas, okay, try to be short and tell me if you had 24 hours to live, what would you do? And you're a part of the recording. I mean, So your voice is still audible in the recording. Okay, go ahead. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what Thomas said is that, first of all, there is a huge possibility you both of you guys have the same dog, the golden doodle. Okay, the name of his dog is Millie, Milee. And he said that if he had 24 hours to live, around the same lines, he wants to spend time with his son and his wife and along with his dog. And I'm guessing, we all are going to have lots and lots of meal, have dance parties, enjoy, relax, go to a spa. I don't know, go wild and ride motorcycles or drive a car, go to a nice spot, enjoy, chill. But the best time you can possibly have is with your family, at least when you only have 24 hours to live. So great answer, guys. Thank you so much, for sharing it. I want to quickly go ahead and give you the opportunity to promote your business. So Rebecca, tell me and my listeners, what is your company's vision and what kind of future are you forecasting for yourself?
Sure. So we are the MRN agency, and we are based in Los Angeles and in Mexico City. We are a brand strategy and cultural intelligence agency. We focus on helping develop go to market strategies for whether it be new or established brands. We particularly our expertise within the tech and telecom space. And also, we're moving into, with a new client of ours, into the insurance space. So the vision for the company, I think it's really simple. I envision our company being able to really fill that gap that I think exists still. Although again, I think the industry has done a really great job at most importantly acknowledging that the gap exists within kind of the cultural intelligence, multicultural, diverse space. It all kind of really means the same thing, but um, being a resource for brands. So, they don't have to, especially with the kind of world we live in now with cancel culture, and there's a lot of landmines around how do we address certain groups or ethnicities, segments, target audiences. It's a little murky, right? And brands should have a reliable agency and partner to help be that guide for them. And so that's the big vision for us. The big vision for us is outside of building activations and creating great live events, which we do for many of our brands and our clients. I think really being more of a strategic arm is where we're headed as an agency. I think more so than ever, our particular skill set is valuable to brands, both in the United States as well as in LATAM. And so the few kind of podcasts and also stages I've been fortunate enough to sit in, that's really been the talking point, right? It's, we want to hang the lantern on. It's important to have these conversations. It's important to bring in people who look like your target audience into the room. It's important to add context to data and then let that drive your creativity, not the other way around, right? Not let creative drive necessarily on its own, but really be have the foundation of data and insights and analytics, and then again the subculture to the cultures. So that's where we're headed, and we are always, always, always available, not just for new business, but also for collaborations and cross promotional and partnership opportunities. We have plenty of other agencies that we work with that, we link arms with all the time to help bring more value to our clients. So reach out to us. We're on LinkedIn, the MRN agency. We're on Instagram. Reach out to me if you have any questions or want to learn more or just want to talk about other ways that I show myself grace and Um, I've got an incredibly talented team, both in the US and in Mexico. And so reach out to them. I think all of them have a different perspective and insights in terms of, what we do as a company and then also where we're headed. So yeah, stay connected with us. And thank you again, Jason, for having me. This has been a great time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And guys, you may have guessed we are in the process of wrapping up this show. So any key takeaways you want to leave my audience with? Any last thoughts you have in your mind? One key takeaway you feel, for people who are listening to this conversation, what would that be, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'll give you three. I actually just recently I was invited to be a guest speaker for the communications department at Cal State Long Beach, and that was amazing. Just to see kind of these kids who have so much vision and so much excitement about what's next to them, and they asked me the same question. They said, what are the key takeaways that we can take away from you and your journey?" And I would say, number one, don't listen to them, listen to you. I think a lot of us spend a lot of time letting the outside noise guide us or tell us or put parameters or boxes around us. And so it truly is listen to that gut feeling, that little voice in you. Let that one guide, where you're headed next, or encourage you to jump because you never know if you can fly. So that's the first. The second, and this is a business one, which is, and I really do believe this, and I'm speaking from true experience here. Your net worth will be directly tied to your network. Whatever business you're in, but if you're particularly within the marketing agent or marketing sphere and industry, a very, very small sphere. So everyone knows everyone, everyone's connected. Career karma is real. And so make connections, make relationships, network, and then foster them, lead those relationships through authenticity, play the long game, and really build that network. Because if I didn't have that network, I would not have been able to start this agency. And then the last one is really the topic that we talked about today. Give yourself grace, give yourself space, and give yourself patience.
Such fantastic takeaway, guys. Such lovely takeaways. So, just rephrasing that, don't listen to others, listen to yourself. Second, your network is net worth. Career karma is also real. And the third one is about give yourself grace, more space, and even patience. Such lovely things, Rebecca, which you have shared. So phenomenal to have you. It's been a great show. I've learned quite a lot. I have a lot of notes also I have made from what I've learned from today's interview. So, on that note, I wanted to quickly give people insights on next week's show. Next week, December 21st, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully, there would not be any changes to the schedule. If there is, I'll keep you posted. I'm going to be speaking about offering golden handcuffs. Although the term golden handcuffs does appear very negative, but the idea is just to create awareness what some corporations and companies do by caging or putting these handcuffs on employees so that they have less amount of attrition and their business continuity is there. So we're going to be speaking on that. We also want to discuss about the financial benefits, what happens, what kind of incentives and tax benefits you enjoy by having employees for an extended or a longer duration. So please tune in to that conversation. You should be able to find it under the events section. And I want to give you guys again a heads up. January 4th, I'm going to have an exclusive interview with the former CEO of Hasbro Interactive. He's also been the former CEO of Atari, Games.com, and he has created a lot of games for brands like Disney, Coca Cola. He has made the Monopoly game, NASCAR, tons and tons of stuff. So that interview is on January 4th. I would highly encourage you to RSVP today. You should be able to find it on the featured profile section on my LinkedIn page. So with that, I just wanted to say thanks to Rebecca for this opportunity to have you on my show, to have this discussion. We had a lovely, lovely conversation. You take care of yourself, stay in touch. And guys, you are listening to this show. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thanks so much.